everyone. Is my mic on? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Southminster Presbyterian Church on this beautiful Sunday. Lots happening all around. The Schultzes are back from Mexico. What else could make this a great day, right? So thank you for being here. We at Southminster are an open and inclusive congregation, which means that we welcome everyone, no matter where you are on life's faith journey, you are welcome here. Today is a special Sunday for many reasons. One of them is that it is Foundation Sunday. And just a word that in 1979, the members of our church voted to create the foundation, which has a vision of creating a community that is peaceful, healthy, economically, and socially just. And the great work that they've done over the years has just been amazing for us to really have that as an asset and a resource in our community. So we look forward to them leading us in worship today. Just a reminder, at the end of the aisles are these beige pads. We call them friendship pads. If you can remember to sign in and let us know that you're here, that would be great. Also, most of you have been around the Peterson Gallery and you know that our silent auction is in fact set up. After worship, there'll be about a half an hour that you can go and bid more, do all that stuff. We will call you back into the sanctuary for about 10 minutes for a very short congregational meeting around 11:30, 11:35. Come back here, elect deacons and elders, and then you'll go back out for about 10 minutes before the auction closes. And of course, the highest bidders win. We do have a money tree out there, so donations are welcome if you're not gonna bid on items or if you just want to donate. So thank you. I will also let you know that next week the Puerto Rico Mission Orientation will be happening. We have 37 people, about 20 youth, 4 college students, and 12 adults going to Puerto Rico. So next weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we have a person coming from Puerto Rico that's going to actually share this experience and preparing us for that experience. That PDA worker, Michelle Munez, will be in worship next Sunday and give a minute for mission. So you'll all have a chance to get to know her. So, also, Children's Coordinator update. A couple things just to know that the Family Life Committee and Personnel Committees have done some work to reimagine the children's ministry, and we're going to be hiring 2 very part-time people in that ministry, and we have hired 1. Judith Foster is where? Judith? Judith is right there, and she will now be the children's program coordinator, and we're really excited about her gifts to do a lot of the ongoing programs that we have in the life of the church, as well as support the children ministry. And we are still looking for a second person that would be more the teacher. But we're halfway there, and Kathy Ludwig is with us for as long as we need. So thank God we have a team. And then just to remind you that the adult educational opportunity on Monday nights with Pastor Scott, the Pre-Exilic Prophets, a 4-part series. So if you want to, it's all on Zoom. So Monday night, 7 o'clock, You can go to the church website to get the link. And then finally, Karen Butler, a word about rebuilding together.
Rebuilding Together, Washington County is back in business again. This is a volunteer organization that paints and helps keep homes in repair so people can stay in their homes longer. We have been assigned a mobile home in Hillsborough to paint and do yard work in. That is next Saturday, May 21st, starting at 9 a.m. It's supposed to be sunny and dry. We'll see if that forecast holds. But if you could come and help, we'd love to have you. Lunch will be provided. We also need a couple of people to go to the Rebuilding Together office and pick up the lunches midday. So if painting is not your thing, but maybe you could drive our lunches to us, that would be great. The sign up is in the window of the kitchen. I put it there figuring that was a safe place on this busy morning. And if you have any questions, find me or Rick Collins after the service. Thanks.
Thank you, Karen. So today's worship, Craig Butler is our lay reader. Stephen Schaefer is leading the choir, but not today. But Dan Anakovich is leading the bell choir, and that is today. Ken Wilson on piano. Chase Ryan is our technical director. So let's take a moment to pause and hear the words from Jack Hyles. Love is the doorway through which the human soul passes from selfishness to service. For all who are able, please stand and join Craig in the call of worship.
Welcome to Foundation Sunday. We are the church that lives into God's future today. A church of many races, languages, and ethnicities that lives by the work of God in Christ that was, is now, and is still to come. The one who is seated on the throne says to us, "See, I am making all things new, a new heaven and a new earth, where the home of God is among God's people." God's future is epic, and it is good news. Remember, God's future, for this is our story. Here are the words of wisdom from the Scriptures. The Greek Testament reading today is from the book of John 13, the one that Scott just referenced. Little children, I am with you only a little longer. You will look for me, and as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. The theme reading today is a quote from Mother Teresa. Our life of poverty is as necessary as the work itself. Only in heaven will we see how much we owe to the poor for helping us to love God better because of them.
Good morning. My name is Mark Greenwood, and I'm the current president of the Southminster Foundation. I want to introduce you to the foundation, but before I do that, I just wanted to share an experience that influenced my thinking about privilege and what we make of it. A few years ago, I listened to a series of 3 podcasts by Malcolm Gladwell. You may know his podcast. It's called Revisionist History, or you might have read some of his books. These 3 episodes are my favorites, and they examine the reasons why less privileged folks have miserably low odds of obtaining a college education, but the same principles apply to so many other areas. The 2 big ideas that I gleaned were these. First, the advantage of privilege is having access to a deep well of second chances, the ability to recover from setbacks. And second, soccer is a weak-link sport, and much of life is similar to soccer in this particular way. Now, I'm not a big sports analogy person, so bear with me and I'll come back to what that means in a little bit. The advantage of privilege is not that everything is made easy for us. Most of us, regardless of privilege, suffer setbacks in our lives. Any of us might lose a job, encounter critical medical issues, or deal with abusive relationships. The advantage we get from privilege is having access to resources that give us another chance. Money, education, friends who can provide support, things that ease the burden and make it easier for us to recover. Our privilege grants us a bigger safety net. Those in a less privileged position could suffer the same setbacks, but without those resources, every setback has a high chance of being one that they won't recover from. If that happens more than a couple of times, the odds against them are grim. Gladwell looks at a well-intentioned program offering scholarships to promising low-income high school seniors, but that might never reach kids like Carlos, a brilliant young student that he interviews, who's likely to drop out of school to care for his younger sister before making it far enough to even apply for that scholarship. And as he points out, there are a lot of Carloses out there, and they could really use access to the second chances the rest of us sometimes take for granted. So now I'll come back to the soccer metaphor. An interesting thing about soccer, it turns out that what limits a team's overall performance is not the ability of the top players, but the ability of the team's so-called weakest links, because many players have to handle the ball to get it in a position to score. So interestingly, you don't win more games by spending more money on the superstars. You gain more by developing the ability of the least capable players. Gladwell points out that a lot of life's endeavors are governed by the same principle. Improving our collective outcomes requires the participation of the whole community, and we don't build strong, vibrant communities if we confer benefits on our star players and neglect those who need help getting into or staying in the game. So these stories really impacted the way I think about what our communities need from us and why organizations like the Southminster Foundation play such an important role. The Southminster Foundation was established in 1979 with an anonymous donation of $250,000. The charter was to provide grants to organizations that help people in our local community, focusing on issues of basic need like adequate housing and food, refuge from domestic violence, and access to basic health care. Over the last few years, the board has also been considering how we can be more influential about mitigating the effects of systemic racism. The donors wanted to fund the yearly grants in perpetuity. The foundation would invest the money so that the returns would cover each year's grants, while the principal would continue to generate income to provide the grant money for future years. Looking back, we see an encouraging record. The foundation currently manages a pool of around $1 million. And over our history, we have granted almost $900,000 to local nonprofits, an amount far exceeding the original $250,000 donation. But each year, we still struggle to decide how much to allocate and who among the worthy applicants should receive grants. If we exceed our guidelines and provide more money in a given year, we risk depleting the pool of money over time and having less to provide in the years to come. And the extra income in particularly good years for investments is what enables us to keep providing grants during the down years, and that's often when the money is most sorely needed. In order to meet more of the need in our community each year, a key factor is bringing in ongoing donations. Money that you donate to the foundation increases the principal so that each year's grant amounts can be that much larger. So how can you help the foundation and thereby the members of your community who are most in need? You can make a monetary donation. We gratefully accept checks made out to the foundation, or you can now easily make an online donation via our website, and all of this information can be found in the brochures that you have today or that you may have received in the mail. Also, if you are so inclined, you can volunteer to serve on a foundation committee or on the board. As a member of Southminster, you are automatically a member of the foundation. For a small investment of your time and talent, you can help us continue to provide these grants to address the most urgent needs in our community. If this interests you, please talk to one of the board or committee members who will be happy to answer any questions you have. And with that, I thank you for your time, and I'd like to turn it over to Randy Ray, who is the past president and on the Legacy Committee.
Good morning. Okay, by a quick show of hands, how many of you think that Social Security and Medicare are great ideas, including those of you at home. Oh, am I ever talking to the right audience? And see how easy it is to take a survey? And speaking of surveys, have I got a deal for you? A chance for your voices to be heard without being asked to sing in the choir, perhaps. We, and in this context, I mean the session of the church and the board of the foundation, have begun to have some discussions about the possibility of creating a program that would recognize individuals who have given an indication that they have left a legacy gift in their estate to either the church or the foundation. And this would likely include a display wall somewhere in the church to accomplish that recognition. Other churches have benefited from similar programs, and we would believe that the same would be the case here at Southminster. We do realize that this is a very private matter for some folks, and we would limit the point of contact to one individual, and if you chose anonymity, we would find a way to do that so that your name would be kept private. We don't have a threshold. You know, if you got a silver dollar in the door someplace that your granddad gave you, that'd be fine. We don't care. We don't want to know anything about monetary limits. There are no constraints. Just let us know. We simply want you to prayerfully consider treating this place of worship like one of your grandkids when you do your legacy planning. So tomorrow morning, the church office will send out an email with the survey. It will take less than 5 minutes to complete. Michelle Neese created the survey, and she will tally the results. No names will be associated with the responses. And she has assured me that there will be no voter suppression and no fake electors. So the session and the board would greatly appreciate your feedback on this issue before we get any farther down the road. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Diane Bender, and I am serving as chair of the Foundation Grant Committee, along with a wonderful team of committee members. I have heard it said that difficult roads often lead to beautiful destinations. People that arrive at Rosehaven have traveled difficult roads. In a recent visit to Rosehaven, Janet Cruz and I were able to see in person their beautiful new space and experience the welcoming, accepting atmosphere cultivated by the volunteers and staff. Southminster Foundation is delighted to grant funds for the second year in a row to further Rosehaven's mission, which Megan will tell you about very soon. Megan Owen is the Development and Marketing Coordinator for Rosehaven. It is the only day shelter and community center for women and children and gender-expansive people in our area. Please join me in welcoming Megan Owen.
All right. Thank you so much for that introduction, Diane, and allowing me to be a part of your service today and kind of talk about Rosehaven more. So, one, we're super grateful for the support from the foundation. We are truly a grassroots agency. We don't receive any government funding, and the way that we keep operating is just people who feel inspired to give, either foundations or individuals, and any contribution makes a difference in our community. So we're just super grateful for the support for the second year in a row, and last year, the foundation funded our supplies program, so making sure that folks are getting their clothing, their shoes, hygiene products, different things like that. And this year, our nutrition program, which last year we ended up serving over 26,000 meals in our community. So it's a rapidly increasing program, which is unfortunate in a sense that people are in need for that, but grateful that we're able to help meet that need in our community. So a little history about Rosehaven. It was originally founded by our Sister Kathy Bowerbroom, our founding director. She basically just went outside in Portland and started interviewing women that were living outside and asking them what resources that they would need. And the biggest response was a safe place to go during the day, because oftentimes in overnight shelter programs, you check in the evening and then you leave really early in the morning. So you're left outside with no support during the day when really it's the time to put the pieces back together. So that's how Rosehaven came into play. And we like to bridge that gap of resources in our community and help folks kind of get back on their feet. Our vision is working towards a community where everyone has safety, stability, love, health, and home. And then can do the next slide. This is our mission statement. So we provide day shelter, resources, emotional support, and community connections to women, children, and those marginalized by their gender experiencing homelessness and poverty. I also should say a little bit about myself as well. I started at Rosehaven as an intern and was really passionate about the work and was able to get a full-time paid position. And I see my role as I do a lot of grant writing and coming to events like this and speaking, as well as doing like different social media and outreach kind of things. But where I see my role in our work is really advocating for our guest stories whose voices are often silenced, and bringing that forth to our community members so that people can understand what's going on and ways to help. And we provide all of these resources, but specifically the community connections piece is super important, in that we're not only a community center for our guests, but for the people who work there, the people that get involved or share about what Rosehaven is doing. It's really for everyone. So that same kind of environment is here in this church for sure. So I'm glad that I can speak more to that here today. All right, next slide. So a little bit about kind of what's currently going on in our community. These stats are taken from, it's not the most recent published report anymore. The newest one just got released. But in 2019, Multnomah County does an annual report where they go outside and count the number of people that are experiencing homelessness to gather information, and so that we can have a better idea of like what's going on in our community and how to support. So Oregon has the second highest rate of unsheltered homelessness in the US. So that's referring to people that are legit living on the sidewalk, in their tents, in their cars. That's why homelessness in Portland is so visible, because we simply don't have enough shelter beds for people to seek that sanctuary. So a lot of people are just forced outside. So that's a really big issue that we need to tackle. And then I think the other two stats that I really want to point out are that 71% of the people counted experience one or more disabilities. So oftentimes, if your Social Security or your disability benefits aren't able to match what you owe for rent, then you end up experiencing homelessness. And that's a majority of the people that are out there are struggling with those certain things. And then that also a lot of the women, transgender folks, and gender nonconforming folks are experiencing domestic violence, and it's a causation of why they're experiencing homelessness in the first place, because oftentimes abusers will hold financial autonomy and all the resources. So to kind of get out of that situation, you simply flee with no support. So that's a really common causation for women and our gender expansive people experiencing homelessness. And the last thing at the bottom as well is that 49% of people living unsheltered have been experiencing homelessness for more than 2 years. So this tells us that once people get into homelessness, it's extremely hard to break out of that cycle, and to continue not being able to have the resources and continue to kind of face different mental health struggles when you're living outside without food or sanctuary. From the updated report, they haven't released all of it yet, but the issue is only getting worse, unfortunately. And that there was a 5,228 people counted considering homelessness just in Multnomah County. And that is up from 4,015 in 2019. So there's been a big increase in folks experiencing homelessness. And unfortunately, 59% of those folks are the ones that are living unsheltered. So again, people just are outside without that support, without a community, and that does not help to get folks into housing or employment or whatever other kind of resources they may need. So the issue is not going away. Unsheltered homelessness has gone up 50% in the past 2 years, and overall homelessness 30%, simply in Multnomah County. So there's a lot of other people in the state of Oregon also facing these same kinds of issues. So we definitely want to play our role to make a difference for this really growing issue. So kind of just what I touched on a little bit too was the causation of homelessness. So fleeing violence, unemployment, lack of citizenship, disability, different things like that are causes for people experiencing homelessness. Oftentimes there's some stigmas about what's actually leading people to homelessness. So we like to kind of just share a lot of what our guests have experienced and why they're experiencing homelessness. And then kind of why are people continuing to stay out there? Why are half the people living unsheltered experience that for more than 2 years? And a lot of that is just lack of shelter beds. You are not gonna get a shelter bed in the city of Portland without being on a wait list for a week, a month, 2 years, depending on the level of shelter. And then there's just not a lot of supportive programming for housing placement. So once people do get into housing and they've been living in a tent for 2 years on the sidewalk, it's a totally different adjustment to be isolated by yourself in a room with 4 walls and not have people that are checking in on you or can kind of help you navigate this transition in your life. So a lot of people end up slipping back into homelessness because there's just not that support when they make those transitions. And then also just a lot of high barriers to resources. So if Rosehaven's goal is to really serve those that are most marginalized and those who can't access those other resources. And a lot of that is due to requiring sobriety or ID or a phone so that you can get a call when your name has been come up on the wait list and you need to claim your bed. So there's just a lot of things that are inaccessible to a lot of people who are living outside. And so while these resources are great and they are supporting people, there's a big population that is not getting any support. So that's kind of like a really big reason why people are staying in homelessness and get there in the first place as well. So what Rosehaven is doing about this issue of homelessness and how we can support this community is serving women, children, and gender expansive people. So we're the only day shelter in our community that is serving this specific population that do have different needs when they're living outside and experiencing homelessness. And we focus on being a low barrier space. Like I mentioned, we want it to be the most accessible to the most amount of people. So how people will receive our services is they come in, they fill out a short intake form, and then they meet with one of our advocates to talk about their own needs, what services we offer, and just follow our community agreements to maintain a safe environment. Some other agencies would require people to have an ID. There's actually a form that people have to fill out that's called a proof of homelessness. So sometimes you have to identify that to an agency, which just is really difficult for people who are in survival mode or don't have the access to those kinds of things. So we want to make ourselves accessible to as many people as possible. And then some of our specific programming, we offer supply and distribution and communication. So offering a lot of really essential items that our guests request, clothing, bus tickets, shoes, different things like that. It's all great if you finally get into a shelter space, but you have no way to get there. So the bus tickets are a really big asset for our services. Last year in 2021, we provided transportation assistance over 24,000 times to our guests. So it's a really big need in the community. We also help charge devices. So sometimes people will have phones or tablets and they're living outside, so they have no place to plug that in to communicate with their family, their case manager, employer, whatever. So we make sure to connect folks with that. And then we also allow guests to receive mail on site. So oftentimes if people are still living in housing, but it's an unsafe environment or a domestic violence situation, it might not be the right decision to have their mail delivered to their home. Or if they're living outside, then they have no physical address. So we are a space for over 300 mailboxes right now. So when people need to receive Social Security benefits or their ID that they just ordered, they're able to actually get that in our space. And then we also have access to technology. So like when you get on those wait lists for the shelter and you need to be contacted by the case manager, you can do that in our space. You can apply for jobs or get resource referrals, different things like that. And we have volunteers on site that kind of help our guests learn basic computer skills. So we're really excited about that. That's a newer service of ours. And then we have our nutrition program. Like I said, we are serving over 26,000 meals. In the past 3 years, the amount of meals we've served have gone up 33%. So it's a really important need. And what we like to focus on is meeting these basic needs of clothing and food and charging your phone. We meet those needs first, so then we can address those more complex or long-term needs like recovery or mental health support or finding housing. If we don't meet these kinds of basic needs first, then there's not a lot of capacity to focus on finding shelter space and things like that. So then we have our advocacy program. So this is the program that's more focusing on our long-term needs. So we have confidential spaces with our advocates that people meet one-on-one. They can be there for emotional support and validation, just kind of a voice to hear what our guests have to say, as well as providing financial assistance. So this financial assistance helps people also keep their housing. So if somebody's living on the border of becoming homeless, that utility bill that we can pay for or the work boots that we can buy for your job is gonna help you maintain that. We wanna be able to provide that resource. And then we also help people navigate resources. So if you've been living in survival mode, it's probably really challenging to be like, I'm eligible for this shelter space that's over on the east side of Portland, and how am I gonna get there? What bus line do I need to take to get there? All these complexities to get what you need when you're already struggling to just simply feed yourself and get clothing. Our advocates are there to kind of help you figure out what that next step is, what you're gonna be eligible for, because we have a lot of knowledge about the social service industry. So we can help these folks kind of figure out what they need and how we can best support them. We also have our shower and wellness programming. So we allow people to have private lockable stalls, which is not always the case in different shelter spaces. Sometimes it can be communal, which is feels unsafe for a lot of our guests. That's what they have expressed to us a lot of times, as well as providing hygiene items and towels, different things like that. Oftentimes people do not have access to a restroom when they're sleeping outside. Sometimes public restrooms are locked or porta potties are moved. And so the restroom is a really big need and something that also restores dignity so that guests can do that inside in our space. And then we also have nursing students on site. This is a super important service because a lot of times our guests will face discrimination when they go into healthcare institutions for a myriad of reasons. But oftentimes our guests will avoid getting support or first aid or going to the emergency room to avoid that discrimination or that mistreatment that they're gonna face at the ER. So we've seen foot wounds and burns and things that just go simply unaddressed. And so our nursing students on site are there to just check in with folks and be a trusting, calm voice that we have a relationship with this person already to get that healthcare that they're really in need of. And then during the pandemic, we were able to educate our guests a lot about mask wearing and how the virus spreads and really communicating with folks about that. Because if you didn't have access to a phone or a computer, then you didn't really know what was going on. So we were the voice for our guests kind of communicating about what was even happening when the pandemic and the lockdown was happening. So those are really important. And then another new service that we just added was laundry. So that way guests can keep their clothing and their blankets for a longer period of time, and we can be a little more environmentally conscious as well. And kind of just meets a holistic set of needs when you can take a shower, get new clothing, wash your old clothing, get your hygiene supplies. So we're really trying to focus on meeting all the needs of our guests as possible to make them successful. And then we also have children programming. So we serve about 700 children, and every year we hold a back to school drive. Pre-K to college age students can get backpacks, calculators. We also provide shelf stable foods and other things like that. And then we also have our holiday gift distribution, where we provide families with curated gifts specifically based on what their kids and their families enjoy. And we offer that to our community every year. It is a huge undertaking to organize about 20 presents for each family, but it's something that's really dignity restoring for the guests and the families that we serve. So it's a really special time at Rosehaven. And then we really focus on community building and empowerment programming. So often, our guests are dehumanized and isolated by society. I mean, you're often taught when you see someone that's outside and might be asking for money to not look at them or ignore them, not acknowledge their presence. And that's so often what our guests talk about. So that's helping their depression, essentially, or making them feel not worthy, or a lot of really like kind of dark thoughts. So we really focus on recognizing our guests, celebrating them, knowing their names, knowing how they like their coffee, finding a dress for them and being like, I think this is so your style, you're gonna look amazing in it, like let's go try it on kind of thing. A lot of our guests come to Rosehaven simply for those relationships, for that conversation, for that community building. So that's an extremely big part of what we do and what our guests will speak to, more than that we helped them get their ID or that we got them a meal. It was that we connected with these people and made them feel loved and celebrated. And we do that a lot through having our Thanksgiving meal and our holiday party. We have a pride celebration, things that are above those basic needs, and really enjoying each other and recognizing the worth of each and every one of our guests, because that's so often kind of dismissed, and the day-to-day for our guests and their experiences. These are just some pictures from different celebrations to kind of give you an idea. We really try to go all out with gift bags and photo booths and catered meals from different restaurants, and our volunteers do a lot of efforts to help provide those services as well. So these are definitely some of the best memories of Rosehaven and what our guests really enjoy experiencing. And we usually have about 300 people that will show up on a given day for one of our celebrations. So it's a big undertaking for our 13 staff members, but it's a super enjoyable time for our community. These are just some general stats about what we offered our community in the past year. And so our supply distribution is accessed over 10,000 times. We supply over 1,500 advocacy meetings for our guests, and we're really working to provide as many resources to as many people as possible, because right now there's just not a lot of resources that are that triage center that are really just getting down and being like, what do we need to do to get the most people the help that they need? So Rosehaven is really working on trying to meet as many needs in the community as possible. Last year, we served, the side is kind of just how many people we served and the breakdowns of the demographics. We do have a large community of color that accesses our resources, and so it's really important that we have culturally competent care and that we have community partners that are BIPOC-led to come on site and also support those guests in a lot of ways. So all of this information and all the information about our resources I put on a little flyer that's at the front there. So if you're ever curious or interested more about what we do or want to contact us, that's all on there as well. So kind of what our unique role in the community is that we're that only day shelter space for the population that we serve to help people put the pieces back together. We are doing the triage needs of first aid, food, clothing, showers, and then we're connecting people to other folks in the community and other partners. A big thing about what we do is trauma-informed care, so the way a space is laid out, or the tone of voice that you're doing, or grounding exercises that you're implementing for people that are in mental health crises, that's something that we are intentional about in everything that we do. So it's really important that we're informed about these traumas and we're able to provide compassionate care for people who have had bad experiences and systemic oppression forced against them. So we want to be mindful of that in the way that we're treating our guests and in our services. These are just some pictures. So kind of as Diane had mentioned, we recently moved into a new facility. So originally we were in Old Town, Portland, and then we moved to First Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Northwest Portland. We were in a 3,500 square foot basement for about 15 years. And when the pandemic hit, we were no longer able to serve people inside. And that was because we would only be able to serve about 10 people a day and socially distance and wear masks. So to continue serving 100, 150 people a day, we had to push to the sidewalk. So for 2 years, people lined up outside for their clothing, their meals. The only time they came inside was for showers and to meet with advocates. We were really proud to be one of the only agencies that stayed open throughout the entire pandemic, and we were able to adapt and support our guests in a really challenging time, but it definitely was not enough. And when somebody was confessing to me or telling me about bad experiences that they had the night before, different things like that, 10 yards away was a jackhammer going off at the construction site across the street. So it was not working. We were not able to provide that same level of trauma-informed care that we had before. So it pushed us to look for a new facility. We ended up being able to move just 2 blocks down the street to the old World Cup coffee shop on Northwest 18th and Gleason. And it was basically a giant warehouse and a coffee shop. And in a year, we raised $3 million for that capital campaign to build that facility, have it be designed with trauma-informed lens, and bring our guests back inside for the first time in over 2 years. And that was a large part in our funders, like the Southminster Foundation, who continued to support our programming as we had to allocate other funding efforts to create this space. So again, everybody's contribution makes a difference for us. And our new space is beautiful and dignity restoring. It has so many elements that we were never able to have before. You can genuinely see when people come in that they feel more relaxed and they can congregate with other folks, or they can sleep on the couch by themselves and separate if that's what is gonna help them in that moment. So we just have so many more possibilities in this space. We're gonna be expanding our hours in June, which we're really excited about, just to continue providing that sanctuary for the people who need us and the increasing amount of people who need us. So some of these pictures are from our grand opening day with some of our guests. And you can kind of just click through some of the pictures too. But this is our old space on the left and our new space on the right. This was our old activities room. And this is our new technology room that we have. This was our old hospitality space, so we would have like 50 people sitting in here eating their meals out of their laps and things like that. And this is our new hospitality space, so it's a lot bigger. The colors and the mural really help our guests, and they really enjoy that as well. So it's a big, big upgrade. Just kind of another picture from our opening day. A map of our facility. We don't have to look at that, but this one is probably the most shocking, but like this was a clinic for our guests that also doubled as a staff office. So it was overpacked and was not working for us. This is our new clinic, which thankfully we got donated these UV lights as well that are able to kill viruses. So if somebody came in that did have COVID, we would be able to put them in that room and have the proper ventilation. It also has a happy light and vitamin D light and all these different settings. So we're really trying to focus on supporting our guests' healthcare needs as well in the space. This was our old wellness desk, so where people check in to just sign up for different programs and resources that we would have that day. And this is the new desk that we have. This was our old shower space. And then this is our new shower space that we have and our new wellness desk check-in. This was our old shop. Guests could come in every 2 weeks, every 30 days to pick out their own outfits and clothes and purses and jewelry, whatever kind of fit their style and their needs. And we were able to upgrade to a much nicer, bigger shop. We also had to close our shop during COVID because we couldn't have people come inside. So our guests have really enjoyed having this back and that autonomy to just have a Northwest 23rd shopping experience. We really tried to make our shelter that nice dignity restoring space. This was our old kitchen on the right and our old food door where we would serve out the door during COVID. Never had a designated dining room area before. And then over kind of to the left is our new dining area that sits 48 people. And also our kitchen as well, which is probably 10 times as big. And we have 2 ovens, which we never had ovens before, so that was really exciting. Just in our first week of services at the new space, guests have visited 2,500 times. We're averaging about 75 guests a day, and we've provided 232 nursing visits as well as 236 one-on-one advocacy meetings. Overall, Rosehaven is really looking to serve the most marginalized. We are looking to follow our guests' self-defined needs and what resources they are requesting so that we can best support them in this transition from hopefully getting out of homelessness into housing and mental health and wellness. We are working day in and day out and adapting our services at any point that we need so that we can continue offering when the homelessness issues in our community keep increasing. Southminster Foundation has been really supportive and built a great relationship with us, and anybody who feels inspired or wants to connect with Rosehaven in a more involved way, definitely reach out to us or grab our flyers in the front. We're doing the best that we can and really focusing on making a difference in our community. I mean, so many people talk about the homeless issue in our space and in Portland. So there's a lot of ways to get involved and help, even if that means just telling someone about resources, or you see someone that might be in need of resources, not ignoring them, waving to them, asking what they need, asking them how their day is. Like, that makes a huge difference. So I'm just grateful that I was able to speak with you here and share kind of a little bit more about what we do. Probably went way more in depth than you wanted, but hopefully you got to learn a bit about what we're doing in our community and the homelessness crisis. So thank you for your time and allowing me to be up here.
Ken and everyone, we're skipping the responsive hymn because we got lots going on today. So we're moving right to prayer. If you'll join me right now. Dear God, thank you for all that Rosehaven does to lift our spirits. We are bombarded by so many negative messages, and to see a mission like this moving forward with the wonderful intent of helping children and families in special ways, women who need so to be seen in this world. We give you thanks for that, for all that does support that ministry. We lift up those we are concerned about this week. We lift up our hearts for the whole world, and we pray together our corporate prayer saying, Our God, our divine parent, may your presence be ever revered. May your peace and justice dwell among us. May your love and compassion live within and between us. Nourish us daily with the necessities of life, sustenance for our bodies, and inspiration for our spirits. And may the forgiveness we give be that which we receive, the kindness we show be that which we perceive. Lead us on virtuous paths and distance us from evil. For your world is our world, and your reign our reign, then, now, always. Amen. will now receive our morning's offering. So once again, let us remember that life is short and we have not much time to gladden the hearts of those who travel the way with us. So be swift to love, make haste to be kind, and may the peace of Christ, which passes all understanding, keep our hearts and minds today, tomorrow, and down all our days. Our service is ended. Festivities are about to begin. God bless everyone. Amen.